Welcome back everybody to our implant minute. This week we're going to touch base on implant stability and how to know when we're ready to restore our case. So let's imagine you placed an implant and you're ready to come back at 3 to 4 months later and you want to check that the implant's stable. How do you check? Now conventionally, some people advise reverse torquing the implant and seeing if that implant comes out, using percussion by tapping on the implant and noticing a difference in sound between the implant that's integrated and non-integrated. I think these kinds of tests can be non-objective, so at times I do like to use something that is more consistent. That's where ISQ comes into play. Let's look at that closer. What is ISQ? Well, ISQ refers to the implant stability quotient scale. It goes from 1 to 100 and it measures the lateral stability of the implant. The ISQ has a non-linear correlation to micromobility. What does that mean? So if you have numbers above 70, it means you have very high stability on your implant. If you have medium stability, you're going to have numbers between 60 to 69, and under 60 means you have low stability on your implant. How does torque differ from ISQ? Well, torque is sometimes used to describe the stability of that implant, but it doesn't mean necessarily that the implant is stable. Why? We've all had instances when we place our implant, especially in an immediate site, where we're getting very high torque numbers and suddenly it drops. Why is that? Because the torque measures the friction between the implant and the bone, and that bone cutting from the implant threads going into place. Let's look at this closer. Well, if you have an instance like this, in which you place an immediate implant into a molar site, you can imagine that implant stability is coming from the bottom 2 or 3 millimeters of apical bone below. But you can see as the lateral sites of this implant are completely large voids, that you don't have very good lateral stability on the implant. In that case, of course, if you were to put an immediate temporary here, it would have potentially the chance of loosening, and ISQ scores, which refer to the lateral stability of the implant, would be low. How do we measure lateral stability of the implant? That's where the devices such as the Penguin or the Austell units come into play. So at the time of placement of the implant, you can take a measurement, and then at 2 or 3 months later, you can retake that same measurement. Now you have objective readings that you can verify. And if you find that the trend is increasing in values, that's a positive. If you find that your implant ISQ values started off very high in the 60s and 70s and dipped below into the 50s, that's a sign for concern, meaning that the implant can be potentially non-integrated, or it could be partially integrated or fibrous encapsulated implant. So in that case, you need to use this test objectively, along with other measurements such as looking at the radiographs, looking at the tissue health of the implant in site, and ensuring that you have all the information available before you're ready to proceed and place that crown on your implant. Hope this has been helpful, and see you guys on the next Implant Minute.